doing this, we typically strike cooperation and partnerships with players around the world. In terms of where we are at the moment, you can have a look at this representation of the globe. The countries in green are countries where we have sold some of our product, one or many of them. And again, this is thanks to the partnerships that we have in many countries. And to give you an idea, I've put here some logos of companies that we have partnered with. Of course, you see Microsoft, which is a long-term partner with us. But what's interesting perhaps is that our partners are, broadly speaking, divided into two sets. One were with partners that are specialized in enterprise unified communication and collaboration, and one probably shorter with less people inside of partner that are specialized in critical communications. Critical communications means fundamentally everything for environments like railways, airports, command and control. So places where reliability is definitely a must. So let's move to the kernel of this presentation. Now, what we are seeing and what we are experiencing, especially in the last 3 months or so, is a massive move of enterprises and companies to remote conferencing and to the use of Microsoft Teams. We have seen a large ramp up of Teams adoptions in the last 3 months. But of course, there are companies out there who already had their own telecom infrastructure, including a legacy PBX and a set of applications which were, I would say, well integrated with this legacy PBX, and the union of them and the integration also of the back-end processes, was something that the customer was used to, had been perfectly tuned in the previous years, and everything was working smoothly. Now, what happens? All of a sudden, they decide to move to Teams because of the scalability of the platform, because of the advantages provided by the platform. And what's not granted, I think, is that all the components that we have seen in the previous slide are still present with the Teams. Now, clearly, don't get me wrong, the telephony part of this diagram works definitely fine. We are using Teams for this event, and we are using as a company Teams also for managing conference calls and for managing outside communications. But there are things here. Contact center first, that's what we specialize in. Integration with the backend processes, they might not be there, or they might not be at a stage that is satisfactory for the end users. Now, points to consider: what can be, let's say, wrong or not perfect, at least. Use of the Microsoft Teams native queues. As you all know, Microsoft Teams enables you to configure queues inside of it, so you can actually use Teams as a contact center, but perhaps not all the functionality you were used to are still there. Some example: distribution algorithms. Microsoft Teams can provide some, I would say, basic distribution algorithms like round robin or broadcasting. Definitely doesn't provide things like skills-based algorithms, for example. That's something we do have. Overflow management. What happens if the queue gets crowded, too many too many calls arriving and agents are not able to deal with them. We have ways to deal with that are triggered by measurable conditions, probably not the same in Microsoft Teams at the moment. And as well, messages. You can set some message like the welcome message or the music during the wait time, but perhaps you were used to a richer set of messages during the time the customer is waiting for someone to serve him. And the second point here as well, APIs from Microsoft. We are still in a way waiting for APIs from Microsoft to enable the management of the Teams native queues by a third-party application. So there are constraints if you are trying to build a contact center application, as we did, and have a tight integration with Microsoft Teams. So here what we are proposing in a way, so we have studied, we come from the old world, we understand exactly how the legacy PBX and legacy contact center worked together. And we have analyzed the Microsoft Teams environment, what it provides, what are the advantages and opportunities it gives you, but also what are the constraints and limitations you have to deal with. And the solution we have come up with and we are proposing to the market is shown in this slide. So we specifically deal with the scenario that goes under the name of direct routing. So in this scenario, you always have a session border controller that acts as a routing point between the public network and the Teams cloud. In this case, we attach to the session border controller with our application, our contact center and recorder application. And we get, through the session border controllers, we get the calls coming from the public network, and we do the basic initial treatment for the calls. So we, for example, inject a welcome message. We can inject music during the waiting time. We can also inject differentiated messages during the waiting time, and we handle all the critical conditions. All this while looking for some available agent. At that point, when an agent is found, of course, we will dialogue back with the session border controller and ask the SBC to transfer the call from us to the agent. Now, from the agent point of view, what can they use to actually pick up the call and manage the call? We give some freedom in this account. So we have our own, let's say, console, our own methods for doing that. We also allow the agent to use the Teams client, the native one, the same client all of us are using today for this presentation. And we have also ported our Attendant console into Teams, and I will probably touch very briefly about this, but we also have a dedicated presentation for this. We also allow compatibility with the Skype for Business client, because clearly we understand that many companies that are moving from Skype for Business into Teams will at some point be in the middle, let's say, with part of their employees still working out of the Skype for Business client and part of their employees already into the Teams world. So both can be used and can coexist in the same deployment. And besides this, we have possibility to integrate our contact center with the customer backend processes to ensure that the previous experience stays as much as possible. Here you see another technical view, perhaps a bit more in detail, but basically it's exactly the same one I showed before with some additional details about the client side, the agent side. So you can also see possibility to pick up calls using common SIP phones, if that's fine for the agent. Now, you might wonder which SBCs do we support? Well, basically, we have taken as a policy to support all session border controllers that are Microsoft certified. So as you know, you need to have Microsoft certified devices in order to connect your public network and the Teams cloud. And so we are currently supporting ribbon communication, SBCs, audio codes, Oracle, and any node. We are currently trying to get an agreement with Metaswitch to be able to support their SBC as well. Also, in terms of the deployment mode, clearly working in Teams, working in Microsoft, the native or natural way of deploy the application would be in the cloud. And our applications are actually fully available in Microsoft Azure infrastructure. So you could have actually our applications and the session border controller in the cloud, because many of the vendors are also providing software only versions of their session border controller. But we have kept the flexibility that comes from our legacy and our history. So as well, the applications and SBC could be deployed completely on premise if this is what the customer prefers, or we can also have a hybrid scenario where, for example, we stay on premise and the session border controller is deployed in the cloud, or the other way around. As I said previously, we are a Microsoft partner. We are also available in the Microsoft Azure Marketplace. So if you go there and search for Mida, you will find our application there. And also we are currently IP co-sell with Microsoft if there is any Microsoft employee wondering about that. We are also working to develop and make available a SaaS model, so a software as a service model, which is something quite appreciated in the Microsoft world. So we will soon be in AppSource, and that's our plan at the moment. Now let's move to some description and overview of our products. We have a portfolio of products. I've been talking so far about the Attendant console, the queue manager, which is the core of our contact center, and the recorder. The contact center comes also with a supervisor console. I will briefly touch about this later in this presentation. These 4 applications are Microsoft Teams ready. They are fully integrated with Microsoft Teams and fully interworking with them, as I showed at the beginning. We also have other applications, like, for example, a fax server or a billing accounting application. They are not strictly speaking integrated with Teams, but they can work in the same environment as our applications. So in case they can be purchased from us. Now let's go to the core of this application in terms of product, the Mida Cloud Contact Center. As I was saying before, is a product which provides automatic call distribution and call queuing. It has a number of basic and advanced algorithms I was mentioning the skill-based algorithm before, but we also have things like idle time algorithm, quite useful if you want that all your agents are, roughly speaking, spending the same amount of time talking with incoming calls or with incoming customers. So idle time will basically always try to assign the call to the agent who's been idle for the most time. And we also have other basic algorithms like round robin, broadcast, or top down in a list. It includes an IVR function. So if you require some initial stage where the customer is asked a question about where he wants to go or who he wants to talk to, and there is some interaction with the dial pad, we can provide that. It's fully flexible, fully configurable by the system administrator without need of customizations on our side. You can define service opening and closing time, and this can be done manually or automatically. And we have a large set of messages for keeping the customer busy and awake during the wait time. We have a supervisor console. I was telling that before. By using the supervisor console, it's possible fundamentally to manage the contact center as well as the agents. And the contact center comes as well with a full set of statistics and reports for understanding, week after week or month after month, the full operations, and do things like forecasting and things like that. Now, from an attendant console point of view, it's we have basically two flavors. One is this web-based attendant console. So all you need is it's a web browser, no local installation of any type of client. It provides a full environment for managing calls and includes a soft phone, or it can also control a desk phone. It can be also integrated with a CRM system, and this goes in the direction of providing a seamless transition between the let's say legacy environment and the new Teams environment. And as well, it can be integrated with the corporate directory. So it is possible for the agent to browse the directory, to interact with the directory in order to manage calls. What's interesting for this console is that it's also available for visually impaired personnel. So we have integration with tools that would be used by visually impaired people or blind people to do their everyday job. CRM integration, I was mentioning before. The native way of doing that, the attendant console is capable of building a dynamic URL using the information retrieved from the call, and then using the URL, address this to the CRM that can respond, opening a pop-up on the browser with all the information required, possibly information about the calling customer if, for example, the calling number has been recognized. As I said before, we also have recently announced the Teams Attendant Console. So that's the porting of the other Attendant Console into the Teams environment. As you can see from these screenshots here, is fundamentally looking as an app that is living into your Teams client, besides your various channels, your chats, and so on. And as you see in the top screenshot here, it provides space for notification of the waiting calls, some information about what's happening in terms of number of calls in queue, the longest waiting call, and also the possibility for the agent to selectively decide which queues he wants to be working on. In parallel, it also has a dashboard which provides some real-time and non-real-time measurements about what's happening in the contact center. So things like number of active calls, number of waiting calls, and maximum and average waiting times and conversation times. All this comes with a companion product, which is a recorder. Now, there are environments where either for legal requirements or for policy, internal policies, every call must be recorded. And the Mida recorder can provide exactly that. We have different ways of recording. We can do that in an active or passive way. We also support SIP-REC, which is quite common to be found in session border controllers. And to some extent, we can also support legacy interfaces through the use of external dedicated boards. Every call that we record is archived in a secure repository. It can be, if required, it can be encrypted, and it can also be compressed if the storage space is at premium, if you want. It comes with what we call a Playback Station. So again, it's a web-based interface that allows the authorized users to search for calls and listen to the calls, and also export the calls outside of the repository if they need to distribute calls for any reason. From an architectural point of view, as you see, it's fundamentally a platform made of different components. So archivers, where everything gets stored, and gateways, which are fundamentally components that allow interfacing with external sources and also allow the system to be fully geographically distributed if this is a requirement. Of course, the recorder, and the same applies also to the contact center, can be deployed in a fully redundant architecture. So if there is a need for high availability, that's a requirement we can satisfy with all our products. We call it the umbrella approach, as the title says, because fundamentally it's a common platform with components that adapt many different external sources, from IP PBX, where we would probably interface using a mirror port. Also legacy PBX. We can support some of the existing PBX recording methods, as well as other environments. I was saying at the beginning that Mida is also involved in critical communications. So you can see things like railway dispatchers, for example. Now, going back slightly on the deployment mode, we were saying at the beginning that Mida can be deployed fully in the cloud, fully on-premise, or in a hybrid way. And all our products are available in the Microsoft Azure infrastructure. Just to give you an example about the consumption, because that's of course important, you pay to Microsoft for the virtual machines that you are instantiating. A couple of data points: for up to 200 agents and 115 queuing channels, all you need is a 2 CPU machine with 4 GB of RAM and 160 GB of hard disk. This can scale up to, for example, next data point is 400 agents, 300 queuing channels with 4 CPUs and 8 gigabytes of RAM and 320 gigabytes of hard disk. Now, of course, there is network activity to be taken into account. Let's say that really depends on the activity of the contact center. But a typical call could range from approximately, as you see here, 16 kilobits per second using a G729 codec up to 128 kilobits per second. Now, on getting too close to the end of this conversation, summarizing why Mida Solutions? Well, I would say we have a contact center which is fully integrated in Teams, it's fully featured, and can provide all that is required by even the most sophisticated customers. It's very quick to deploy. We have taken particular care in designing something that can really be installed and made operational in a matter of hours. We can provide excellent professional and support services. We have a web-based ticketing center for all your problems, which can be contacted for fast and quick resolution of any issue you might have. You can count on our experience. We have more than 15 years of experience in this market and are always ready to discuss with you and find the best solution. It can be deployed on a pay-as-you-grow model. I was mentioning the SaaS model we are working to adopt soon, and it can also provide an easy migration from Skype for Business to or other legacy solution into this new world of Microsoft Teams. Now let me close by showing you this slide. I would like to thank all the people listed here. We are one of the sponsors of this event of Commsverse. But clearly, it would not have been possible without the help of all the other companies that you see here, and we thank them as well for their contribution. Couple of more slides. We appreciate your feedback for this conversation. You see here the link, and this conversation will also continue after its end. You can join us on a breakout session in our booth directly, and you can see here as well the link for joining us. Thank you very much. That's all for now. I think I've been close into the 30 minutes. If you have any question, just type them in the Q&A window.
Thank you, Giovanni. Appreciate that. We'll leave this open. Thank you. You finished right at the 30-minute mark. We'll leave the Q&A open for about another 5 minutes. And please check out the announcements. You'll see the link to the separate breakout session.